Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced at North Idaho College on the shores of Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guest.
I'm so pleased to welcome you to the North Idaho College Public Forum. Today's a very special one for us. We're so happy to report to you, our viewers, that with this program we're starting the 35th year of the North Idaho College Public Forum. That's a remarkable amount of time to be on the air, and it's been our pleasure to be with you all of those years, and many of our viewers have been with us much of that time. And we thought we should have a very special guest and a very special topic to commence the 35th year, and therefore I welcome to the program our friend Michelle Fink. She's a businesswoman in the state of Idaho, and she's also the president of the Human Rights Education Institute in Coeur d'Alene. She's here in another capacity. She recently visited Ethiopia, and our topic today and again next week is Life in Ethiopia, a travelogue. Our guest has brought with her some wonderful photographs and some video that we'll be showing over this 2-week period. Michelle, welcome to the program, and thank you for helping us kick off our 35th year.
Thank you, Tony. It's an honor. It's an honor to be here.
And I'm so pleased to have our regular panelist, Janelle Burke, who is an attorney in the state of Idaho, and I'd like to say about her, she is commencing her 32nd year on the program. And Janelle, thank you for this very, very long commitment. You've been so dedicated, and we appreciate that.
You're very welcome, Tony. It's been quite an adventure.
And quite a journey, hasn't it?
Yes.
And with that, you can open today's questioning.
Well, we've met many interesting folks like you, Michelle, who have had great experiences. And you've recently been to Ethiopia. At the beginning of our show today, there were some items that you had brought back from Ethiopia. They're going to show them in a minute on the screen. And can you tell us what some of those things were?
Yes, the basket in the back is a handmade basket that they make in Ethiopia. They use them for obviously various different reasons, carrying food, serving food. The leather basket in the front with the beads on it is, I fell in love with it as soon as I saw it. I was not leaving there without it. It's an injera basket. It actually looks very similar to the other basket on the inside. It's covered in leather, and it's decorated in the silver beads. And then it also has a handle so you can strap it on your shoulder and carry it around. The item in the front is a ostrich egg, and it's painted. It's got a scene of a coffee grinder, so to speak. They have coffee is very their number one product in Ethiopia, so there's a lot of coffee. And there's a kind of a hollowed out log, and they, instead of grinding it with our modern coffee grinders, they crush it with another piece of wood, and so that's the design on the front there. So those were 3 of the items. I brought back a few more, but I was kind of partial to those 3. So,
thank you. Well, you went to Ethiopia for a particular purpose. Can you explain to our viewers what that purpose was?
Yes, I met some people from Spokane that came to our local Rotary group, Sunrise Rotary. Give them a little plug. They have an international assistance program. It's a microfinancing organization. They have a few places in the world that they do things, but the one particular one that these individuals were associated with was Ethiopia. They have microfinancing, which means the loans are very small. They loan to women in business, either to start a business or to increase their business. The loans range from about $120 up to $150 to $180. They're trying to increase them. That's an annual loan. They have to pay it back with interest. There's some fees involved. It's run just like a bank under Ethiopia financing laws, so it's quite stringent, but it really does a lot for the women over there.
And so you went to see this with your own eyes and to find out about the program and how it was working.
Exactly. I attended a few meetings here to find out exactly, how the program worked and what they were doing. We visited some of the businesses that the women had. We visited their homes. So we were right there in the heart of the southern part of Ethiopia. And it's all run through and distributed through churches over there. The Calahuit Church manages the program through an executive director, and it's quite extensive because, like I said, it's under the banking and financing laws, so it would just be like running a finance company here. So they have an executive director and loan officers, and so all these people were involved, and they're the ones kind of chaperoned us around the country and took us to visit the women, and it's pretty interesting.
Thank you.
Michelle, we always love for our viewers to get a chance to go with you on the trip. We do that through photographs and we do it through video. And you came down the other day and we went through a rather large bank of photographs. And
That was only a small portion.
but it was wonderful because we got to pick certain ones or choose those that we wanted to show. And at this time, we're going to ask our staff to put up on the screen the first of 12 photographs. And if you'll take our visitors with you on this trip.
This is fairly early in our trip. We flew into Addis Ababa, which is the capital, and then drove south about 6 to 7 hours. It's a long drive. This is one of the first areas, and this is their kind of a local wheat. It's called teff, and this is their local product that they make a lot of their staple food out of. And this was just off the side of the road.
And that is the what you just talked about. It's a form of a food? Or?
Yes, it's like a grain, teff, and they use it to make a product that you'll see later here. It's called injera. It's their staple. They eat it every day.
It's a very poor country, and that's one of the things that's essential to their nutrition.
Exactly.
On the second slide that we will see, if you'll describe it for us.
This is, again, the northern, we're kind of the central part of Ethiopia, but the northern part of our trip. It is extremely dry in the northern area where we were. From Addis all the way down to Dilla is where we stayed for 2 weeks. This actually looks a little bit green. It was really dry in that northern part. As many of you probably heard, there's a drought in Kenya and Ethiopia right now, and I can attest to the hot and dry.
They have a lot of droughts, and there's another part of the country that's much more green than this part.
Yes, we'll see that.
In the southern part. The third one, I think, is a wonderful blossoming of flowers.
Yes, this was taken on our way down. We ate at a restaurant lunch. It's kind of interesting because you'll be going along and it'll be very dry, and then there'll just be these huge, giant, blooming bushes, and so it adds a lot of color to the area.
Do they survive without much water, these kind of?
Some of these do, yeah, they have to because it was pretty dry in a lot of those areas. Yeah.
And in our fourth photograph, we're going to see, I believe, some of the living conditions.
Yeah, this is again on the road down to Dilla, and there's one main road that runs from Addis to Dilla. It's the only paved road in the area. And this is right off the main road. You'd see these little areas as you went along. All of a sudden you'd pop into a little town or just a little area that had some homes and houses. And
these are living quarters.
Yep.
And then we're going to move on to what I believe is an agriculture product here.
This is another one of their staples called wasa. It grows on a wasai plant, and that's what you see in the background there, and I think later we'll see some more of this. But they make a porridge and also kind of a biscuit, a bread out of this. And again, those two items, the injera and the wasa, are their two main staples. And it grows all over the southern part of.
And the next one really illustrates the friendliness. I was very impressed with your photographs and video, how friendly the people are. And this is a great photo of a number of the children.
Yes, they are extremely friendly. And when our car or our van would drive by and we'd be up in the hills visiting these people, when they saw us, it was just like a magnet. They would come out of their homes and run after our car. And wherever we stopped, we had a group, and they were great. They loved to get their picture taken. They loved to see their picture on the digital camera. And they were all smiling. They are, regardless of how poor and the conditions are over there, they were a wonderful people, a great group to be around, and a lot of happy faces.
And in the seventh photograph, we again want to show, this is a mother with her child, looks like.
Yeah, this lady is in the program. This is one of the first groups that we met with at the first in Dilla, and she was putting her baby back up on her back, and as their carrier, as our front carriers are, and so we got this great picture of her.
They have to walk a lot, don't they?
They walk everywhere.
Yeah.
There is a little public transit, but no, they walk everywhere.
That keeps them in certainly good condition,
Yes.
Doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Now, wildlife is something we want to look at, and here's a photograph.
Yeah, these are some of the turkey buzzards that were right outside our hotel in Dilla. I think they got leftovers there, so they were there every day. They didn't bother us. They were just up on the fence
They're
there.
wild though. They're not.
Yeah,
tamed.
they're wild. Yeah.
Now that's an amazing picture. And now here we see a cart of what is being hauled here.
I believe this is water. This is one of my favorite pictures because this is the main road that we drove on for 7 hours. And you see this almost the whole way. There's people walking, there's homes, the entire distance. And this is typical of what you'd see. They haul things with the little carts, whether it's water here or other items they're taking to market. And as you can see, they're all walking. There's very little public. And they don't certainly have private cars.
You can
very
see
many
most
of
people
them.
are walking there, but that's kind of the kind of transportation for hauling some of the things such as water.
Exactly.
And in our 10th photograph, we have, again, a gentleman from Ethiopia. And what is he doing?
You can kind of see there, he is selling bananas. And I was really intrigued. I got quite a few pictures of him. He was just on the side of the road, and he's got bananas hanging on both sides. And he just takes them to market, or, I mean, we could have bought some had we chose to there. The gentleman that you see the back of is the executive director for the LETA microfinancing program over there. And he was talking to him about negotiating the banana price, but we didn't buy any, so it must have been too expensive for a local banana. But
The 11th photograph has on the side, here he is again off on the edge there, I believe, and then here are some of the other people. You stopped and talked and greeted a lot of people, did you not?
yeah, we were on the main road again, and one of the ladies had a business there, a little store, like kind of a convenience store, so to speak. And like I said, whenever we stopped anywhere, we had a group of people, and so these were some of the people that were just standing around listening to what was going on and checking it out.
And the final 12th photograph shows again a rather large congregation of people and a lady, and what is she doing?
This lady is in the local market in Dilla, and it was the only market we went to because when we went there was such a large group of people that were there that it was not really frightening. I mean, we weren't scared, but we were like, where is everybody? You know, it was because we just are such a magnet. And she is selling the wasa. This is what the product, when they scrape it off of the leaves, looks like. And she's selling her wasa, and she's also one of the loan recipients.
Now, since you and your group did not speak the language of Ethiopia, and they did not speak English, most all of them, share with our viewers who might be taking such a trip in the future. I believe you had actually, much of the time, 2 interpreters. Would you share with us how you communicated?
Yeah, in Ethiopia they speak 85 languages. So I think that can be an issue with them for communication. Obviously, we had, of course, spoke English. The executive director spoke Amharic, and a lot of the people in the southern part spoke Gedio. So sometimes we'd have to have it translated 3 times till we got it to English. Like we would interview the women, they would speak in Gedio, and then they would translate it into Amharic, and then Solomon would translate it into English so we could understand what they were saying.
Now, did you have one interpreter, or you had 2 different ones for the 2 languages?
2, yes. Neither one of them spoke both and English.
But
So,
with those, even those 85 languages, those 2 particular languages would get you through most of the conversations you needed
where
to.
we went, yes.
Where you were
yes.
going. Thank you very much. Janelle Burke.
Could you please tell our viewers about some of the businesses that these women were involved in? You were primarily financing women, and these were very small loans by our standards here. But what kinds of businesses would they have been engaged in?
Most, I would say, were coffee. Coffee, like I said, is the #1 product of Ethiopia. And so a lot of them would buy the coffee and then resell it. So their challenges would be first the purchasing of the coffee and then hauling it because it's in big bags and heavy. And a lot of them would have to rent a donkey or something to carry it, or a cart. And then they would resell it at the market, and that's how they made their living. We had a couple ladies, one in the used clothing business, which is pretty big over there. Not many people get to buy new things like we do here. We did have one lady that had a new little clothing shop on the side of the road. We had a lady that had a grain business where she would sell grain and kind of like the teff we saw, or barley is big there. And they roast barley. It's kind of like a popcorn or a snack. And we had some roasted barley. It was really good. Those were the typical.
But they're not generally engaged in crafts. Is that correct?
Not these, no. We did have one lady that sewed for a living. so probably mending or just sewing. And we met her, and it was kind of interesting. She had one of those old treadle sewing machines out in the middle of the market, and we met her out there, and we talked with her a little bit. But most of them are in more of a food and a product base, partly because they need food and they're going to buy food. They're not always going to buy extras. They can't afford them.
What kind of a per capita income do Ethiopians have? Do you know?
I think their average income is about $200 a year
So-
in this area.
So they're going to have about $20 a month, basically,
Yeah.
to spend, and that has to take care of their food and their clothing and their lodging, too. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And do most of them own their own homes outright?
You know, I tried to get a little of that information because I'm in kind of the real estate business, but they do. They own their homes. It's a little bit different than here. They have a little teeny home, which I'm not sure if we have any. We do have a couple pictures, and they have a really tiny plot of land that they have, but.
Do they own it in fee simple like we think of fee
See,
simple?
I don't know. I couldn't find that out.
Whether they have the same kinds of property concepts that we have?
They
Perhaps.
do. Of course, the
They're
big cities
different.
are a little different than in the Dila area where we went, and you'll see some more pictures where it's all little dirt roads that go up into the hills, kind of like we'd see here, you know. But so no street signs, no markings, no lot lines. So it was different. But they all have their little area, their little space, and I really don't know the ownership. I think they do have either they're renting or buying, but as far as the technical end of it.
Life is challenging, but there's such happy people. We saw that with a lot of things I got to view that won't have on the program because of lack of time, but I was so taken by their friendliness and their happiness. Both the men and women have to work, I suppose, long hours, and the area you were in, a lot of it was agriculture, or you know, working to prepare to have the food they need. If they have free time and all, we think of sports and recreation. What did you find them doing other than the hours that they had to work so hard?
Yeah, well, soccer's big. The kids play soccer. In fact, we bought some soccer balls for the churches to distribute, and like you said, they were about $20-some a piece. So to them, they could never afford to buy a soccer ball as an extra. There's obviously most of them don't have electricity, so they don't have telephones, they don't have TVs. So, and it's very dark in their homes. So the daylight hours are like between 6 and 6, pretty much constant. So in the evenings, I think it's just kind of, you know, what they can do. But there wasn't a lot of recreation. I mean, I think their daily life takes a lot of their time. I mean, walking everywhere obviously takes a long time, and just making their living. But one of the big challenges is sending their children to school. And that's part of what this program does. It helps them be able to finance the kids going to school. They have to wear uniforms. You'd see all the kids going to school either in blue or burgundy. They all have a color, so that the kids spend a lot of time. And then just their daily life, bringing water. And
A lot of them are walking and working from 6 to 6, and so I guess then when it gets dark, I suppose they they talk with one another, but I guess they have to have, most of that time is for sleep because the days are very long and hard for them.
Yeah. Well, we had electricity in our little hotel where we were, but even then we didn't have television, so, it was, you kind of get a turn down a little bit, you don't, at the fast pace and the craziness that we are here is relaxing, at least that part of it.
Creates more conversation.
Yes, it does.
with your colleagues that you went with. As to their schools, about how many years of education do they get? Here we talk about K through 12, and what's the span of education for most of their children?
Yeah, that really varies. We met a lot of families who are actually sending their kids on to the secondary schools and even trying to get them into colleges and things. They do have universities there, and that is something that they really strive for. They're trying to educate more so that they can move forward in the country as a whole. I would say, like 8th grade maybe is kind of if they can get an 8th grade education, I think they're doing good, and then hopefully move on from there.
At the national capital and the government and its process, and we'll talk a little more next week about that, but is there a national language, a common language they try to use across the country, even though they have all these varied languages?
Yeah, that's a good question. In Addis, where the capital is, the language there is Amharic, and that's what our executive director spoke. I think it would be good if they did have one that they could all speak. They're in such outlying areas, and there's been a push to where their cultures, they're trying to keep their cultures intact, and so all these different areas have different languages, a little bit different cultures. So there isn't actually a language that they all speak. And a lot of them did speak English. A lot of the educated people did speak enough English to, that we could understand and communicate with them. But I think that's actually one of their real struggles, is their communication, because they don't have a...
So in relation to policies and laws, there would have to be a lot of translation into different languages to inform their people about the policies of their country.
Yeah.
Janelle Burke.
In this round of questions, I'd like to have you please describe what an Ethiopian family might be like. What did you find and observe about the Ethiopian family?
They're so typical in a way, and then so different. They marry young. Their lifespan obviously is much shorter than ours. Typically, they'll have 4 or 5 children, maybe more. The people that we stayed with in the hotel had 8 children. They are typical in a way that they have their homes, they go to school, but their lifestyle is so different from ours because of their extra items they have to deal with the water. I mean, you'll see later in some pictures they're still doing their laundry in the streams, and so they all have jobs and things that they have to do. But the kids, they were very friendly, and they play. The kids play. They attend school. I think their school hours are a little bit shorter than what our typical school hours would be.
Is there generally a man and woman in the home, a mother and a father?
From what we observed, yes.
And do they have close extended families that live nearby?
They all have their separate homes, basically, but the communities are based like that. I mean, you're probably going to find that their homes and things are close by most of the time. They're kind of in the same areas.
So grandma and grandpa probably are close by, and aunts and uncles would be around, and cousins and so forth.
Yeah, a lot of family.
And does mom work outside the home?
That's when they first took this program over there, it was all based to do the loans to women. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, the payback's really great. And I think that could be the mothering, nurturing thing, their responsibility to the family. But Ethiopia is still kind of a man's world. And so there was a little bit of a challenge for the men to understand what the women were going to be doing, and they were going to be doing their businesses and helping the family. And we actually had one gentleman that stood up in one of our meetings and say that, he told his wife not to take the loan. He thought it was a mistake. But she took it because the church had picked her, and he was glad that she did, and he told her and everybody that he had been wrong in that decision. So they are coming together, and they're working towards that. They almost need to because of the finances.
And the children, what kinds of activities and things aside from school? And you mentioned soccer, of course, that they liked. But what would a little girl, for example, do? Will she have dolls and other things like that?
We didn't see a lot of that. I think, and again, if they do, it's something homemade. Some of the toys I did see was, how we see the little duck on the stick that rolls along with the flopping feet? Well, they had sticks with wheels on them. No duck feet, no duck heads, so, and I saw some kids with those, and they would roll those along. So they make their toys and their items that they play with, and I'm sure they have some homemade dolls and things, but...
What about musical instruments?
They... Locally, I don't know if they have some
but
specific...
Probably they're more voice-based.
They love to sing.
Rather than having... or maybe they might have some guitars or other kinds of stringed instruments that would be easy to have, but they wouldn't have such things as pianos or...
Yeah, not in their homes. The churches are very big over there. There's like 3 religions. You're Christian, you're Orthodox Christian, or you're Muslim. And every church that we went to or saw, they were huge groups there. And they do have instruments in the churches and microphones and systems that, they've got the electricity there. But in their homes, they'd have more of the maybe guitar or some small instrument that they could, but they do love to sing.
And their clothing, what kind of clothing? Do they change clothing a lot? Like, you know, we tend to have many outfits that we can wear on different days. And maybe 2 or 3 times a day we might change.
Yeah, we're spoiled. They don't have a lot of clothing for the most part in the poorer area where we were at in Dilla. They actually, we would see different people a couple of times and they would have basically the same thing on. What was interesting was that they kind of layer their clothing, and because their shirt and their pants may not be very nice, but then they'll put on their best jacket or something to dress it up. A lot of their clothing is used, and they just wear what they've got, a lot of them. And so you do see a lot of tattered clothing. It's all pretty Western because I think they can get it used. They do have traditional clothing that they wear for certain functions and things like that. But the general, they're wearing the same thing we are. It just looks like we've worn it, thrown it away a lot of times.
We talked early in the program about the organization that you worked through to go there. We may have viewers who would like to go to Ethiopia or contact your organization. So I'll ask the staff to put up on the screen the contact, and if you would give the viewers some information, how they could get in touch with the same organization that you went with to Ethiopia.
It's out of Spokane. It's called International Assistance Program.
And here's the up here's the.
Yeah, William Rowe is the president right now of that, and his phone number is 509-466-5562.
Could you give that again for someone who's getting a pencil and they had not yet put it down?
509-466-5562.
And he's in Spokane.
He's in Spokane, and they would love to talk to anybody who would be interested in helping or being involved in the program.
And so you could contact him, and then he could send information, or there's probably a website and things they could contact.
Yeah, they can get you anything that you need to know about the program.
Yeah, or literature, whatever you need.
Exactly.
Well, Michelle, we thank you so very much, and there's a lot more to talk about concerning life in Ethiopia, and the good news is you've graciously agreed to come back and be on our program again next week, and at that time we're going to continue this discussion, some areas we didn't get into today, and we'll show some more photographs on that program that were not shown today. And we have a special treat, ladies and gentlemen, for you next week. We have some video with us that Michelle was able to do while in Ethiopia. And, one of the gifts to you will be that the children will be singing to the guests like Michelle, and you'll get to see all that next week. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running in-house college production on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.